Today's vocabulary lesson will be about crime. Now, crime is a big topic. There's a lot of good vocabulary in this topic. I think it's a good way to learn these words. Well, one good way is to watch a lot of detective stories on TV, and you'll get a lot of this vocabulary in those stories. Sherlock Holmes, that kind of thing. Anyway, let's get straight to business. Remember that you commit crimes. You don't do crimes, you commit a crime. And another word for a crime is an offence. You could commit an offence, you could commit a minor offence, which means not important. Petty also means not important, so it just means not a very important crime, not murder or rape or smuggling, but perhaps something minor like maybe vandalism of a bus stop or something like that. That would be a minor crime, a petty crime. And they're usually committed by juveniles. Juvenile is another word for youth. So a young person who commits a crime, this is an example of juvenile crime. So vandalism is obviously very often juvenile crime. A word for breaking the law would be, another word for committing a crime is breaking the law. Let's come on to police then. Police can search you, which means that they look in all of your pockets for something dangerous or illegal. They could also search your vehicle. They could also search your house, search the premises of your house, which means all of the garden and all of the house. So this word search, it's often used differently than look for. Look for something, but search someone. Search his house for something, yeah? So it's they are used a little bit differently, search and look for. Sometimes you can use search for like look for, but I think we usually don't. I think we usually use search plus noun. Okay, first of all you commit a crime, then the police investigate, then they arrest you, then they interrogate you, which just means question you. Then they charge you with maybe theft, let's say the crime of stealing something, and you go to court. Now we're going to look at some of the words connected with the trial. Now, firstly, the trial may be adjourned, which just means delayed until a later date. And if the trial is adjourned, then the criminal or the suspect, because he's not actually being convicted yet, and that's another good word here, to convict someone, it means to be found guilty and sent to prison. So he hasn't been convicted yet, and so the suspect is remanded in custody. Okay, the accused, you could also say, the accused is remanded in custody until the trial starts, which just means he's kept in a prison until the trial starts. Now, maybe they'll say that you're not fit to stand trial. If you're very old or crazy or something like that, you might be declared not fit to stand trial. At the trial itself, the lawyers will cross-examine the witnesses, and we have this just means to question. In court, when they cross-examine the witness, they ask them lots of questions in court, and the lawyers are either on the prosecution, which means that they're not defending the suspect, they're attacking the suspect, or they're trying to find out if the suspect, or they're trying to ask questions to make the suspect look guilty, really. They want to prove that the suspect is guilty. But there are also defence lawyers who want to prove that the accused is not guilty. So we have witnesses, prosecution lawyers, defence lawyers. We also have a judge who decides on the punishment. He decides on the sentence. And we have a jury, who are the 12 people who decide on the verdict. The verdict is a decision of whether the person is guilty or not guilty, because at the start of the trial, the accused must make a plea. He must make a guilty plea or a not guilty plea. If he makes a guilty plea, then perhaps the trial doesn't last very long and the guy is immediately sentenced and punished. But if he makes a not guilty plea, then there needs to be cross-examination of the witnesses and so on and so forth. Now, the lawyers have to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the suspect is guilty. The prosecution lawyers must prove beyond reasonable doubt. However, They may not be able to do this. Perhaps the accusations are false. Perhaps they are trumped up charges, which just means false accusations which have been directed at the accused, in which case the accused will be acquitted, which means set free, not sent to prison, found not guilty and acquitted. He will not be sentenced then, and we say sentence for when the judge sentences you to 10 years in prison. So to sentence someone to 10 years in prison. It may not be that kind of case, though. It may be somebody looking for compensation, and the judge may decide that the plaintiff, who is the person making the complaint, that the plaintiff is correct and he should award damages to the plaintiff because the person needs some kind of compensation for the wrong that they have suffered. Now, there may be a miscarriage of justice. This is just an expression meaning that the court was wrong, that the court made a wrong decision. They found somebody guilty who was actually not guilty, and this would be a miscarriage of justice. Justice has been carried very badly. It's gone wrong. Also, there may be perhaps the accused person committed a crime, but there may be mitigating circumstances, extenuating circumstances. Both these words are synonyms, and what this means is certain circumstances in the accused life mean that we can forgive him more for his crime. It mitigates his crime. It makes it not so bad. So I'm not sure. Maybe the accused had several reasons for why he lost control of himself and committed the crime, and if there are good reasons, these would be considered mitigating circumstances, extenuating circumstances. Okay, the different kinds of punishment. Community service is simply where you're punished. Your punishment is perhaps to do some kind of work in the local area. It could be it's usually manual work, but it could be cleaning up the area in some kind of way, or planting trees, or who knows, but some kind of community service. This would be the lightest, most lenient punishment, and as we go down this scale, the punishments get harsher. A harsh punishment would be the death sentence. Capital punishment would be a very harsh punishment. So a lenient punishment would be community service, or an on-the-spot fine, also very lenient. On the spot just means there and then you get fined. So maybe you committed an offence on the road and the traffic police stop you and they give you an on-the-spot fine, so you don't go to court. A suspended sentence is when you are found guilty and you are given a 2-year suspended sentence, but this means that you don't go to prison, but if you do anything else that's wrong in the next 2 years, you'll be punished with this sentence and whatever other sentence that you're given for your other crime. So it's kind of kept there just in case you commit a crime again. It's obviously still lenient because you don't go to prison. A 2-year sentence is when you go to prison for 2 years, but usually you are released earlier than the 2 years, perhaps for good behaviour or something like that. Capital punishment means the death sentence. Okay, so I don't think there's been a case of the death sentence for a long time in England, a good 50 years at least, perhaps much longer, 60 or 70. Corporal punishment used to happen in schools, because corporal punishment just means hitting as a form of punishment, and not long ago in UK schools they still had corporal punishment where you could get hit with a stick. I never had this punishment when I was at school, and nobody did who was in the same year group as me, but I believe my older brothers and sisters, some of them had corporal punishment. Let's come on to the different types of crimes now. Blackmail is when you have some kind of compromising photos, for example, some kind of usually photos which the victim doesn't want to show to anybody. So maybe your victim is married and he's having an affair, and you have photos of him having an affair. You have very compromising photos, and so you send some copies of the photos to him, and you say, pay me some money and I won't show these to your wife, this would be blackmail. And you can remember this very easily because it's like a black letter. Yeah, it's a letter with some photos inside or something which you really don't want to see, and somebody's threatening to expose you, to expose your secret. Bribery is when you pay the police or anybody in a position of authority some money for a favour. So it's anyone in a position of authority. When you pay them for a favour, it's a form of corruption, it's bribery. Drug dealing is obviously selling drugs of any description. You could also say drug trafficking, but I think that this is really a form of drug smuggling. Down here, trafficking is very often moving it from one country to another, so it's a bit more serious, it's moving it over the border. Fraud is any kind of financial crime when somebody uses a deception to take your money. If somebody's doing that, it's fraud, it's a form of financial crime. Hijacking is when somebody, usually terrorists, take control of a vehicle, very often a plane. So it's when they take control of something in order to commit a terrorist act, a terror attack, usually. I don't like the word terrorist act. Students keep saying it and it's come into my vocabulary, but I think we usually say terrorist attack or terror attack. On to kidnapping, which is when when a group of criminals steal a person, very often a child, and then demand a ransom, which just means some money for the child's return, or the adult. It could be an adult. They demand money, a ransom, for the child's return. Okay, murder is killing somebody. Rape is obviously forcing someone to have sex. Smuggling is taking any illegal substances over the border. It could be drugs, it could even be people, illegal immigrants or something like that, people smuggling. But it could be cigarettes, it could be alcohol. Okay, vandalism is just usually the juvenile crime where you break something, mess something up. Tax evasion is avoiding paying tax. Theft has a lot of different categories in English. Burglary is stealing from somebody's house, very often when they're not in, but maybe when they're in. Some burglars maybe prefer that moment. They think it's a better time to steal. So burglary is from a house. Shoplifting, surprise, surprise, it's from a shop, but it's not money usually, it's products. It's whatever the shop is selling. It's stealing things from the shelf and putting it into your coat or your bag. Pickpocketing is stealing from someone's pocket, surprise, surprise. And it could be money, it could be their phone. They take it out of your pocket when you're not looking and you barely feel it. They're very crafty criminals. They don't do it. They don't let you know that this is happening. Muggers, on the other hand, they take something from you and they threaten you. Maybe they show you a knife or a gun and they say, give me all your money, give me your wallet. Robbery is also with a threat, but I think it's not usually on the street. Mugging happens on the street or in the underground or something like that. Robbery happens in a shop, and so they also run in with guns or knives, but they threaten the post office staff or they threaten the bank staff. They threaten to kill them if they don't hand over the money. So that's a lot of crime vocabulary. There are a lot of phrasal verbs with crime, but I have already made a lesson on phrasal verbs with crime, so I'd rather you went to that lesson, which you can see up on the screen at the moment. Go to that lesson if you want some more phrasal verbs, but I put a few down which I missed in that lesson because there are so many with crime. So if the police come down heavily on something, it means they restrict that particular crime. Maybe they come down heavily on drug dealers and they put a lot of policemen out on the streets to watch the dealers on the streets and to try to arrest them in greater numbers. So they come down heavily on that particular crime. Or they may clamp down heavily. It's the same, exactly the same as come down heavily on. They may clamp down heavily on something else. They may clamp down heavily on smuggling. And then that just means that they check more goods which are coming over the border to try to arrest more people. Now, turn someone in is very similar to two phrasal verbs which are in my other video, inform on someone and grass someone up. Because when you turn someone in, you give them to the police. You give information to the police which leads to them catching you. So you turn someone into the police, you make sure that the police catch them. You could turn yourself in, which means that you've committed a crime and you walk into the police station and say, hey, I'm guilty, I want to turn myself in. Okay, last one, to bring someone to justice. This is obviously to get someone to go to court. So if the police bring a murderer to justice, they find him, they arrest him, and they make him stand trial. Okay, yeah, thanks for watching this lesson. If you have any questions about all of these words, that's a lot of vocabulary, please ask under the video, and I hope to see you all soon. Thanks for watching.